Thank you for joining us at Beerfish Fanatics. And this episode is actually brought to you by Whisker Secret Tackle.
So make sure you guys go to whiskersecret.com for all your catfishing gear.
Enjoy the episode, guys. All right, welcome back to Beerfish Fanatics. This is part 2 of the episode that we did at the Midwest Fish and Wildlife Convention. So hopefully you guys enjoy this one. If you haven't checked out part 1, make sure you guys go back and check out the previous episode we just released yesterday. So check out part 1, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this part 2. And don't forget, tomorrow, part 3. Enjoy, guys. Can you hear me?
Recording?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we're recording.
I can hear you, and
Wait.
I can hear myself. So
There we go.
That's
That's
good.
What are you doing,
I'm
man?
getting mixed up over here. Wait, is this one plugged in?
Yeah, it should be. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
All right. We're only a beer and a half in, by the way, guys. So, but
Well, I had today off, and I went fishing.
must
had
be
a
nice.
few drinks.
Must be nice. But anyways, welcome back, everybody. We got Chris Brooks, right?
Yep.
From Missouri, and you're a fishery biologist down
Yep,
there. Is that
yeah.
correct? This is gonna be great because I have never fished in Missouri, so I'm gonna have a lot of questions or information. Hopefully, you can help us out
Yeah.
to learn a little bit more.
And my big responsibility is the Harry S. Truman Reservoir, or most people call it Truman Lake, but that's the largest reservoir in Missouri, 55,000 acres. So that's what I can talk about in
Okay.
depth.
That's a pretty
Not that
popular
10
one.
minutes is enough time to talk in too much depth.
We'll do the best we can. It's all right. We'll stay a little bit over time if we need to learn a little bit.
We'll go till Jeff knocks on the door.
There we go. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris. What do you actually do at your location, and everything, and just tell us the hot bite too, if you don't mind.
So yeah, like I said, most of my job is working on Truman Lake, understanding that population, sampling, monitoring, all the normal fish biologist stuff, and then meshing that together with what the anglers want. So our big fisheries are crappie, blue catfish, and then we have seasonal paddlefish snagging, and a little bit of wipers or hybrid striped bass, and then the list goes on with some other stuff. But those are probably the four, what I would call the four biggest ones. The crappie and blue catfish for sure are really big. Paddlefish, like I said, seasonal. It's a snagging season, March 15th to April 30th.
Okay.
So you got to get it in your 45-day window. But are you familiar with snagging or that process or what that is?
Well, I've seen videos of guys, they're out in boats, like basically just dragging, well, not dragging, but trolling, like big treble hooks, right?
Yep, dragging big weights with big hooks, and you jerk on the pole until you hook up with a fish and put a hook in some flesh, and a lot of those fish, the guys that they're good, they're seeing 60, 70 pound fish on a fairly regular basis.
Okay.
And the biggest one I've seen sampling was like 103 pounds.
Wow.
I know somebody caught one that was, I think, 113 pounds, and just
That's
heave into it and lug it in.
What's the record for a paddlefish?
I think and you might have to fact check this one.
Okay.
I think it's 143 pounds or something in
Wow.
that ballpark. Came out of Table Rock. Okay, I'm lying. It was out of Table Rock, but they've broken that record a few times in the last year over in Oklahoma.
Okay.
But the biggest one in Missouri would, I think, be 140s out of Table Rock.
All right, so before we get too far, why do we have to snag these paddlefish? Like, why can't we just catch them on a lure?
So they're like filter feeders, and they don't go for lures.
Mhm.
So you're just
You can
you're just
try.
you can try, but you have to snag them because you're not successful if you don't snag them.
Right. I mean, unless they just swim by with their mouth open and your lure
Right.
goes in their mouth.
Yeah. So that doesn't. We're not that lucky.
Right.
Why is there only certain times that you can do the snagging?
Well, it's just there's a limitation on the harvest, like we have on so many fisheries, but then that also coincides with when they make their spawning runs, and when they're vulnerable and people can catch them, it just kind of lines up. That's the best time of the year to catch them.
They're good eating. I've never caught one, so obviously.
I've caught one down below one of our spillways down here because we had high water that year, and they made their way up. I'm guessing from the Mississippi because it's one of our our Des Moines River basin dumps into the Mississippi.
And they move like crazy. So we just finished up a study where they're paddlefish. We tagged paddlefish in Truman that went through the dam into Lake of the Ozarks, through the dam into the Osage River, and then I believe they had one that was recaptured at Gavin's Point in South Dakota,
Wow.
which
Whoa.
is hundreds of miles away.
That's crazy.
And they're pretty regularly making longer distance trips than you probably would expect them to.
Interesting.
And as far as the taste goes, it's probably a debatable topic like so many fish. I would say they're different than anything else, but kind of like you have like there's fish and then there's salmon and trout, and they're just different. Well, paddlefish is its own separate third category that's just different than anything else. And some people like them and some people hate them, and they've got some extra red meat on them that you got to trim up or you're definitely not going to like them. But there's definitely groups of people that do like them.
Yeah, I've had it once, and if I remember correctly, it's been many years, probably at least 10 years. I think that was like 10 years ago when I caught that one. But the texture is not like a regular fish. It's a little bit different.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
You can. I've grilled them up before, and they can grill up pretty decent. But it's just, I don't know. They're different.
Right. I've had sturgeon before too. I think I'd like paddlefish more than sturgeon.
Interesting. I might have to go try this one day. Go snagging.
I don't think I've had sturgeon, so
Yeah,
I can't
sturgeon.
make that comparison.
It was a little fishy, but it was alright. I mean,
It's a fish.
It's a fish. I know some people, some people try the hardest.
You don't like for your fish to taste like fish?
Apparently, a lot of people don't. Like, what are you guys doing? Freaking smothering it like crazy.
Oh man.
But anyways, so Missouri has blue cats. I'm a big fan, and we just had Ernesto from Kansas, and Kansas got some pretty awesome bluefish fisheries. So what can you tell us about Missouri's bluefish population?
Like Truman Lake, where I'm at, has really high numbers of blue catfish. We actually have more small blue catfish than we'd really like to have in the fishery. It causes them to grow slow. So like I know a guy, I think he posted on this morning on Facebook that the SAR limit's 10 fish, and they went out and caught 30 or 40 or 50 of them before like 9 o'clock in the morning. It's just like ridiculous. They go out and catch their limits and hammer them. And we'll get a few, a good blue cat in Truman is 30, 40, a really good one's 50 pounds. If you want to go for big catfish, you want to go to the Missouri or the Mississippi River. That's where, people pull out 100-pounders every once in a while. And we just don't see those in Truman. We grow too slow.
Friend of the show, River Certified, always goes to that area, I believe.
Yeah. So for like those boundary waters, does the Missouri DNR, do you guys manage those bodies of water, or are they kind of just you kind of more manage the lakes opposed to let's say the Missouri River? You're not stocking fish into those bodies or into the river, are you?
So we'll stock a few lake sturgeon and a few pallid sturgeon. I don't know that is outside of my responsibilities, but we're not stocking a lot in the Missouri River. I can tell you that the blue catfish and they're reproducing on their own, and we've got the silver carp problem like everybody else does. So.
Right.
That silver carp thing, it's I think Hank was going down that river, and he was saying they were jumping like crazy, literally.
I think Hank went down to Mississippi.
Oh, was it? Yeah,
Yeah,
Mississippi.
Mississippi.
So they're bad on the Missouri. I've worked over in Illinois a little bit. They're really bad over there. So Missouri's not as bad as some, especially when you go over to the Illinois River, and I'm not sure what the other ones look like, but it's not as bad as it could be, but it's not good by any means.
How are you guys dealing with them to help, I guess you can say, minimize them, if you can, I guess. I don't even know.
So I'm not really involved with any of that work right now. Okay. So I guess most of my responsibility is Truman Lake, and that's where I focus my time on. I kind of keep up a little bit on what they're doing, but I was in the silver carp world for a little while, and I'm out of the silver carp world now.
Are you glad?
So I manage the largest reservoir in the state. It's the reservoir that I grew up going to in the summers when I went to the lake, so I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. But I enjoyed killing carp.
Okay, well let's jump into some fishing. What type of fishing do you like to like? What's your preferred species?
Well, I like to fish for muskies.
Okay,
They're very limited in Missouri, so I have to go north for that. If I'm in Missouri on my home lakes, crappie, hybrid stripers, catfish, white bass. White bass are fun because they fight real well.
That's pretty much our favorite fish to fish for.
Yeah, my little avatar for my YouTube and social media is like me holding a hybrid striped bass because, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Iowa we stock a whole bunch, but we don't produce or rear those fish here. We bring them in from other states. Is Missouri one of those states? Do you know?
We don't produce we don't spawn them.
Okay.
We get them when I think they're like a couple days old, where they'll ship them in from other states, and then raise them up in the hatchery and stock them when they're probably 3 months old or something. I'm not sure. I know we stock them in June, and we probably pick them up in April. So May, June, 2 months, 3 months.
Where are these hybrids coming from?
What state?
Yeah, what state?
I'm not real involved with that. I think at times they've come from Kansas, at times they come from Arkansas.
Yeah, we just had the Kansas guy.
I forgot to ask him that.
Right.
But I think
for some reason, I think somebody mentioned that we get them from Missouri, but obviously they're wrong.
Yeah, and then we get them from Kansas. I think.
Okay.
I think somebody told us that. I think I remember. If fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure we get them from Kansas too.
But I would think Arkansas makes sense too because they got stripers and the hybrids down there. It would make sense to come from a state that has the actual stripers too.
I think you get some from Arkansas.
There we go.
Makes sense.
I don't want to talk too much about the other states and what they do, but I think you get some from Arkansas.
My last question would be like, okay, if there's one thing that you wish the general public knew of, what you guys do for the state and everything, what would be the one thing that you wish people knew, or they maybe misconceive as a general public, like they're not doing this or something like that, or they're in regards to protecting species or anything like that? Is there anything that you would like that? Because we do have listeners in Missouri too.
Yeah.
So is there anything that hey, this is not true, guys, or this is true? This is what we actually do to help the fisheries here.
I think just so much of the time, probably people get their own ideas of things, and we try to understand everybody's opinions and viewpoints. And I guess maybe more than anything, when I set a regulation, we have regulations that half the people are on one side and half the people are on the other side. Mm-hmm. So, at some point we have to make a decision of which way to go. So I guess, I don't know if I'm giving you a real specific answer, but just the general, I think most people understand that we're trying to do the best job we can. But personally, my opinion, I think, putting a face, for me as the biologist of the lake that I manage, putting my face in people seeing me, whether it's something like this or other things I do more locally, people getting to know me helps people trust me. Mm-hmm. So I guess kind of what you're asking the question of what do they need to know. And I guess I would put a lot of that burden on myself, making sure that people know me and understand that I have the best interest out there for the fishery, and I want to do things that help everybody out. But at the same time, I can't help everybody else because not everybody wants the same thing. I mean, you get into something like catfish, especially. There's a lot of people that are harvest oriented. And they want to be able to keep every fish they catch, and maybe maybe I'm exaggerating to the extremes, but you have a group that wants to keep every fish, and a group that wants to not let anybody ever keep a fish because they want to get them as big as they can possibly be, and you kind of have to bring what's total opposites. I mean, you can't bring total opposites together and get a regulation that works, but you try to maybe find some kind of middle ground, find some kind of place that works for people. And then and the other thing is just, our fisheries do have limitations.
Yeah.
And just because a fishery was good for something 20 years ago doesn't mean it's going to be good for that now. And especially on the reservoirs. So the reservoir is its own special thing where, when Truman went into place in 1978, it had the boom that every fishery has, and it had this great bass fishery, and then over time things change, and that's just how, especially with your reservoirs, because they're not natural, that's just how it works, and things change, and people want things to be the way they used to be, or they complain about when it's not as good as it used to be, and it's kind of, the catfish is a little bit different because we've got lots and lots of numbers, and if you have lots and lots of numbers, you don't get as many complaints.
There you go.
You don't get as many complaints with lots and lots of numbers as you do with low numbers and no size.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
But yeah, just understanding that we're trying to do the best we can, and that includes a lot of things, and taking in everybody's considerations or everybody's thoughts, as well as what the fishery is capable of.
True. And what we'll do, if allowed, if we can get you back on to do like a full episode with you, Chris, because then we can really dive into your whole lake and everything a little bit and really get into that. We'd love to have you back on. We can just do like a Zoom whenever you have time. I know we've just got time constraints now, trying to get everybody in for 10-15 minutes, but I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners would like to hear a little bit more about Missouri for sure, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I'll give you my information.
Perfect. Sounds good, man. You got anything else for him?
Well, all I got is we need to get down to Missouri, because I personally, I go to Kansas quite a bit. Missouri, it's about the same drive, maybe even closer. Truman Lake's like
closer.
5 hours.
Do you want to know the hot bite?
Sure.
If you like to crappie fish, that's what's hot.
Right now?
Well, that and catfish, but yeah, the crappie fishing's hot.
Really?
Like the guys, the serious anglers, say right now is the best time of the year to fish the lake for blue catfish and crappie.
Interesting.
So I think right now, well, we're in Iowa, and we're kind of coming towards the end of our ice season. I'm guessing down there in Missouri, things are like kind of, the ice is coming off the lakes right now.
So Truman is right on the edge, and if you by the time you get to North Missouri, you'll freeze up. By the time you get to South Missouri, you won't freeze up. And Truman is on that middle where we had a couple days where it was froze up, where you couldn't have fished. I know there was, I talked about how great the crappie fishing was. I know it was a week before last, I think. The lake was almost entirely froze up, but there was still a guy that fishes every day, fishing guide, that put his boat in and broke through the ice to get to his crappie spot where the water was opened up, hammered his fish, caught his limit real fast, and then take out. So it's like, especially with crappie, and I hear the guys talking, the ice will freeze up over the blue catfish faster than it will the crappie, but the crappie are on the bluffs where that deeper water is, and they're like, as long as you got a little bit of open water, you get out there and catch crappie. You don't need much.
We're gonna get Chris back on. We'll dive into a little bit more about the crappie. I love crappies, and I suck at catching crappies, so that's good to hear. So we'll see what we can do. But other than that, Chris, thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time, and then we'll get your information. We'll definitely we'll touch base. We'll get you on for a full episode.
Yep. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you.
This episode is brought to you by Kalona Brewing Company. If you live in Eastern Iowa, make sure to swing by Kalona Brewing Company's tap room. Amazing food and amazing craft beer. If you live in Central Iowa or in the Midwest, swing by your local supermarket and see if they carry the Kalona Brewing Company line of beer. And also, swing by your local restaurants, local bars, see if they have Kalona Brewing Companies on tap. If not, make sure you guys request it. I kid you not, you won't regret that. Other than that, enjoy this episode, guys.
So relax, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
We're kind of a relaxed podcast.
Yeah, have you listened to any of our...
I hadn't, and then Jeff told me about it, and I was like, I'll go on and watch a few of them, and I love the beer. I like the fishing, but the beer is awesome.
It's killer for us. So I mean, it's killer for me, man. This is my time away from the kids, so I get a chance to drink some beer, talking fishing with this guy, and then we have guests on. So I can't beat that.
I don't know what that's like. Away from kids? Time away from kids?
Man, how many kids you got?
I got two. I got two young ones. And
I got 4 young ones, so it's interesting. But
And I'm the single guy that just goes fishing.
I live through him.
Lucky.
I live
So
through him.
90% of my fishing now is putting fish on and off for the kids and baiting hooks. And oh man, I want to go fishing for myself so bad.
Join the club. So, all right, welcome back, everybody. And we have Mark. How do you spell it?
It's Fincel.
Fincel. So we got Mark
Yep.
Fincel from South Dakota, and you're a fishery biologist. Up there.
Fisheries biologist, yep.
Perfect.
So I've moved around a little bit for different positions, but currently fish biologist, yep.
Do you have like a certain lake that you're associated with?
Yep, and so I'm in charge of a lot of the lakes in the center part of the state. The two of them that are the biggest is Lake Oahe and Lake Sharp, and Lake Oahe is by far the biggest. It's 150,000 hectares. It's got more shoreline than California. It's a fourth biggest reservoir in the U.S., so
Wow.
big lake. Yep, goes all the way up into North Dakota. Luckily, my jurisdiction stops at the border. So
We actually have quite a bit of listeners from South Dakota because we do a lot of ice fishing topics and all that stuff. So obviously that's the hot area right now. A lot of people go there. You guys get a lot of tourism, right?
we do. We get a lot of tour. I was going to say condolences. So this last week we had 60-degree weather for like 4 days, and we lost ice on, especially from like Pier South, grassland ponds, which are very popular. Lost almost all our ice down there.
Really?
We actually had fishing events set up for this past weekend, and we had to cancel a bunch of them because they couldn't get on the ice.
Wow, no way.
Yeah,
That much?
shorelines, 10, 15 feet of open water before you're getting to the ice. Not everywhere, but lost a lot of our ice.
Ooh, so they're going to be like spring fishing here pretty soon then.
Very, very soon, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm on a lot of these Facebook groups, and some of the locals, they're pretty vocal about like us Iowans coming up to South Dakota. They give us a lot of shit.
That's everybody. Don't feel bad that it's just Iowa. That's everybody. And, it's one of those things, I think they recognize how good they have it in South Dakota. South Dakota is like one of the best states to live and fish. Hands down, and they want to protect that. I understand that, but on the flip side, we have such a great resource. I want to share it with everybody. I want everybody to experience it. But
Right, we're buying licenses.
Yep,
we're spending money.
Oh, hands
we're going
down.
to your mom and pop shops. At least we try to. We're spending money, so it's not all bad. You South Dakota
Dakotans.
guys.
South Dakota,
South
yeah.
Dakotans. Is that right?
Yeah,
Is it
South Dakotans. Yeah, Dakotans. Yep.
Good job, man.
But and you know what? That's the minority. very
Right.
much
Of course,
minority. Most people
there's
are very
always the
vocal.
vocal minority
Yeah.
that kind of puts a bad image for everybody.
Most of them are very good, and we have such great resources. Man, I want to tell everybody about it and have everybody come out. But on the flip side, I got my spots I like to go. I like to fish there by myself every now and then. But
So the lake that you help cover, what's the main attraction to there? What's the main species that everybody's going to target there?
so we're South Dakota. We're walleye. We're very walleye centric. No matter what happens, our primary targeted fish will be a walleye, no matter what. It's just part of the culture. It's embedded deep in the culture up there. But we have amazing pike fisheries, amazing smallmouth, Chinook salmon, doing awesome right now. We just broke, so in Lake Oahe, we have 3 of the big 4. So we have the state record for pike, Chinook salmon, and we just broke the smallmouth bass record in South Dakota out of our reservoir. And over the last 2 years, we have spawned state record walleye out of Lake Oahe, but nobody's been able to catch one hook and line yet. But we know they're out there. We've handled them, but nobody's been able to catch them.
What's the limit for walleye there? I'm just
4.
Is it 4?
It is 4, yep.
Are you guys ever going to limit? The reason being because I was actually in some of these South Dakota groups, and I was just wondering, we might have somebody from South Dakota here that we're going to speak with. And any questions? The very first couple questions I had was like, why don't we put more limits on walleyes up there in South Dakota? They were asking because it would help in regards to the fishery and everything. At least that's what they're thinking. But they're just wondering, is there a way, at least during the months or certain months, can we set limits on walleye? Because that was the biggest. Like, honestly, I probably had like about 4 or 5 people that actually hit me up about that.
So we get that all the time, and part of the job that I do a lot of fish research. And one of the first things we look at before we do any kind of regulation changes is there enough harvest on that fishery to make a difference if you put a limit on it. The fact is, Oahe's huge, man. 150,000 acres. When we were doing our tagging studies up there, the highest exploitation was like 17% in 1 year. Most years, it's down around 10 or 12%. When you start looking at how high of exploitation you need before you start having regulations, make a difference, you're looking at 25, 30% before it actually matters. So, yeah, there's a lot of people at a boat ramp, but when you look at the size of the lake, there's actually very little harvest that happens up there. So right now we have a 1/20-inch regulation that's completely a social regulation.
Okay.
We could take that off and you would not tell a difference in the fishery itself. but it's a social regulation. We had some issues with people, when they bring 3 or 4 really big fish to the cleaning station and somebody doesn't have 3 or 4 fish, then there's issues, right?
Yeah.
Finger pointing and how could you do that? But so we have a 1/20 right now.
See, the funny thing is, I had no idea this social regulation thing was even like something that fisheries even considered until we got to know Jeff Kapaska and with our crappie limits. He's like, yeah, it's purely social.
Mm-hmm.
Like 25, whatever. People, it's just what the people wanted, pretty much.
Hands down, and we try to do that. We serve the anglers 100%.
Right.
And our voice is heard. They come to us and they say, "Will this hurt the population?" And most of the time, a regulation will not hurt the population. So then we throw it back on the anglers. Do the anglers really want this regulation? It won't hurt anything, but if that's how you want to regulate yourselves, that's fine.
That's the thing. I don't think they realize it's not going to change anything like you were saying, but I think it's more of people who have a bad day of fishing, and then like you just said, you just see somebody caught
exactly.
really good, like, damn it, it's because they're over harvesting.
Yes.
That's the first thing that they're thinking, like, I didn't catch shit today.
Yep.
That guy caught limit easily. Look at that, 1 hour.
Yep. He needs to be limited. He cannot
Yes.
harvest that many. I can because I don't catch as many fish, but he definitely should not be harvesting that many.
I think that's the biggest. I think that's everywhere. It's not just in South Dakota, but it's just same thing with Iowa or same thing with species. It's just because one bad day, then you see somebody else having a good day. You're just like, yep, that's the reason. Over harvesting.
Right. And the thing is, the general public, like me and him, I think we're kind of fortunate that we get to speak to people like yourself that are kind of behind the scenes, and we get a little insight, opposed to the general public. They really don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and that's kind of why we have this podcast. If they listen to us, they're like, oh, okay, some of the stuff that our DNRs do makes more sense now, instead of, oh, why doesn't the DNR do this? Why don't they do that? Oh, they need to do this and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And there are times when we do want to go in with a regulation because there is something that's a problem, and biologically, what do you want to do that? The last one we did was removed a length limit on ponset. So we had walleye that were stunting at like 14.5 inches. There were so many fish in there that their growth slowed down, and that's where we went to commission and said, we need to get rid of a 15-inch minimum. You guys need to harvest these fish because they're not growing. But those cases are actually very rare where we go in with a biological reason to say, let's change a regulation. I would say more often than not, a lot of those are social regulations.
And then, like how you just mentioned, a lot of these regulations, they're kind of like on a case-by-case basis.
Very
right?
much
You
so.
can't just take that regulation you mentioned, just apply it across the whole board.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%. And that's really hard to tell a lot of anglers too. That the biggest thing is growth and mortality. You put one regulation on one lake, well, growth could be really good or really bad on another one, and the regulation would do nothing or actually hurt them a lot of times. Same thing with harvest limits. You have really good recruitment, you have a lot of fish out there, you can harvest a lot of fish. Well, this lake's completely different. It has very bad recruitment. We don't want to harvest as many fish out of there. But.
So what do you think is the biggest challenge when it comes to setting these regulations?
I would say public input and truly understanding what the public wants. So we hear from the group of anglers that are the most vocal, but that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily indicative of what everybody wants. Like, we want to have a regulation that the majority of the people accept. But the problem is that when you come to commission meetings and stuff like that, it's always the loud voices that get heard the most. And it's hard for us to kind of judge, is that truly indicative of everybody, or is that just a few people that are very, very vocal? That's one of the hardest things, like trying to figure out what our anglers want. Because we serve the anglers. Trying to figure out what they want is tough.
Right.
How's the perch?
So we don't have a lot of perch.
Okay.
That being said, the few perch we get are jumbos, are really nice fish, but very few people. Same thing with our crappie. We get massive crappie, 15, 16-inch crappie.
Jeez.
But they're very few and far between, so it's hard to target them. We had a year class that came through a couple years ago, and we knew that year class was not long for that lake. They're aging out pretty soon, and so we went in and started trap and transferring 14, 15-inch crappie and putting them in small urban ponds, rural community ponds, and kids are going out there catching 14, 15, 16-inch crappies.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, but we knew that they were going to be gone, and I think within 2 years, that fishery had all the fish died, and they were gone.
Do you guys have a lot of like farm ponds and stuff up there that you guys? Because I know like in southern Iowa we have a ton of farm ponds that the Iowa DNR helps stock and help. Do you guys have a lot of that in South Dakota too?
We have some. So we have a lot of dugouts. So, almost every ranch has a dugout where they water cattle and stuff like that. And in the past, we did a lot more working with them to stock and whatnot. But it kind of got a little overwhelming because we always had requests to go do it. So now we have to enroll our private lands into moderate public access so that any work we do on private land, they have to allow some kind of public access to it. So if we're stocking it with something from a hatchery or something like that, technically those are the state's resources, all of the anglers' resources. They have to allow people to get on there and fish.
Yeah, so they can't just freaking hog it all to themselves.
Mine.
Exactly.
It's mine.
Yep. And you'd be surprised how many people are really receptive to that. We can go into a pond and say, you have a 20-acre pond right here, and, it's all private. We could, stock XYZ, do a lot of stuff for you. Would you like some public access? And hands down, most of the time they're like, yeah, why not? Yeah, let people come in, and we mark it on the website, and we say, this is a private pond, but open to public.
It kind of basically everybody benefits from that.
Exactly. The problem we have in South Dakota is everything's tied to hydrologic cycles, and right now we're going into a drought. So ponds, lakes, everything's dropping, and pretty soon we're going to start losing a lot of our fisheries, which is not good.
So what do we need to
Water.
fix that?
Rain would help, right?
Snow, actually.
Snow, that's what I was wondering.
Snow is the best thing for us. If we can get a bunch of, I know everybody hates it, and I hate snow, but the best thing for us is to go into a wet cycle and get feet of snow on the ground, fill up everything, recharge everything, and then we're good for a long time. But
a lot of people don't
hopefully
realize that snow is. That's what I don't know if I read it, I heard it somewhere. Like, because of the drought, they go, we need snow.
we need snow.
Because normally I'm just like, snow, but then it makes sense once it melts. Where's it gonna go?
Yep. So when you get rain percolates through the soil, goes down into the water bank. When you get snow and that ground's frozen, the water doesn't actually drain into the soil. It goes across the land to your sloughs and ponds and stuff like that, and that's what fills it up right away. Those summer rains, you might raise a lake an inch or two, but if you get, the equivalent in snow, a foot of snow, oh man, your lakes go up fast.
Huh.
And that's what we need. And that's good for that's good for fish and waterfowl and birds and, everything.
So snow is good.
Snow is very good. Rising water, very good.
There you go. Interesting.
Yeah.
I like I said, I heard it. I just didn't know. Now that really explains it. I'm just an idiot. Like I said, I don't know, man. That's why I love this. I love doing this podcast. I'm just learning new little tidbits all the time. So it's kind of cool.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Snow.
Yeah, you said you're kind of like in a drought period. Is this past season, has it been comparatively worse than the last few years?
Oh yeah. So the reservoir came up in 2008, 2009 particularly, and we've been near full. Our big reservoir, Lake Hawaii, we've been close to full for the last few years, and we're dropping 10, 15 feet a year. So much so that our ramps are coming out of the water, so we're starting to dig out our old low water ramps, and access is going to be an issue this next year as we're moving from ramp to ramp trying to provide access for people, because your ramps go down and then there's rock, and so you have to put in new ramps, and it's going to be really hard for our anglers this year, and they have to bear with us as we're trying to keep access open, but as that water comes down, sometimes a foot or 2 feet a month, we're just trying to stay on top of it, and it's tough, and it costs a lot of, don't get me wrong, it costs a lot of money to get contractors in there to move dirt and build ramps.
Very true.
It's tough, and it doesn't look like there's much for snow up in the mountains. So I have a feeling our lake's going to keep dropping this year, which is tough.
I hear you. The only last question I got.
Shoot.
What do you like to fish for, Mark? And what's the best fish to eat in your opinion?
Oh, no, those are two different questions.
Right, I was gonna say those are two different things.
Sorry, I had to add two.
So my two favorite fish to fish for, hands down, my favorite fish is paddlefish.
Okay.
But I've only caught two, and that's because we have a lottery system in South Dakota where you can only get a tag, and it took me like 5 years to get my paddlefish tag the first time. Got the second one. Amazing. Like, my first one was like 80 pounds. Wow. I was using like a broomstick, a king cat out there, and it's doubled back, and it was 20 minutes of riding along, just fighting it. And It was so much fun, and I would do that again in a heartbeat. But there's just not a lot of those fish, so we actually have a lottery tag system to catch one of those. But if you guys ever get the chance, holy cow! You want to talk about a ride? It's wild.
I've caught one in my life, and it was, well, actually, no, two, now that I think about it. It's like this freaking little scrawny guy that was like this long, and then one guy, I was actually catfishing with a piece of cut bait and a floating jig head, and I'm guessing it swam by with its mouth open, because I hooked it in the mouth.
Yeah.
And the thing was, it was at night, and the nostrum.
Yep, the rostrum.
Is it rostrum?
Rostrum.
Rostrum was broken off.
Oh.
And then all we saw was the fins. I'm like, dude, what if it's a shark? 'Cause, like, their fins are kind of like a shark.
Yeah.
They're shark-like.
Yeah.
And then, it didn't have the nose.
Yeah.
And we were like, man, dude, like what if it's a shark or sturgeon or something? We were like freaking out. And then my buddy, he just reached in there. He's like, oh! Then he threw it up on shore.
Yep.
And then once I got a close look at it, I was like, wait a minute, this fish looks weird. It's a freaking paddlefish without the paddle.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty common. They lose their paddles, especially when they're moving, when they go over a dam.
Yeah.
They spin down the dam or through concrete tunnels or whatever, and they'll break their paddles off. Boat accidents a lot of times too, as guys are going, they'll cut the rostrums off. And it's, believe it or not, there's quite a few of them out there that survive that and still do well. But
Interesting.
Well, this one didn't survive it after I caught it.
I'm telling you, 85-pounder, man.
That's insane.
You'll be done after
That's a
that.
big boy.
I think
You'll
the
put
one
it
I
in
caught
time.
was maybe 10 tops.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine 80-pound.
It's fun. So that's my number one. My number two, which I can't go paddle fishing all the time, but number two is salmon. Salmon's it's a hoot. It's one of the toughest fighting fish I've ever fought. So we use downriggers on Lake Oahe. We're fishing down 140 feet, 150 feet, and you have a release go off, and then all your line is slack. And you just sit there and reel as fast as you can, and you see a fish on the surface in like 3 seconds dancing along, and it came from 150 foot to the surface that fast.
Jeez,
and you're reeling, and as soon as you get it tight, it goes down, and you just watch the drag, and it's just going down all the way down 200 feet. Then everything goes slack again, and you reel back up, and you do that until it tires out. Oh, it's a hoot.
Dang, that's
Man.
cool. I mean, I know we're trying to wrap it up here, but so these salmon, are you guys stocking them? Oh, okay.
Yep. So we stock Chinook. We just got done stocking Atlantic salmon as well. We're providing a kind of a different opportunity. They hang out in different water columns, so we thought different types of anglers would be able to access them. But yeah, stock Chinook, and I think in a couple years we're probably going to start stocking kokanee as well. But
All right, we're gonna have to.
it's fun, man.
We got to get up
Do
there,
it.
man.
It's a blast.
That's so cool.
Yeah, we
That's
definitely
so
got.
cool.
We got to get you back on. We'll definitely get you back on.
Yep.
Because I've been telling everybody we want to get a full episode, an hour or so with you guys to really be able to dig into your location and everything. And but this is kind of awesome for us, just to kind of we're talking to you guys, which is so cool. I'm mind blown right now, just the type of fisheries you
It's
guys
got to be amazing. So, like, I even see it from state to state, but the differences between us, and I think you had Chris in from Missouri, and then go down and talk to the Kansas guys about blue cats, and like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did. It's pretty intriguing.
It's so neat.
I love it. This is cool, man. So, no, definitely thank you for just joining us here. But we'll definitely get in touch with you, and definitely get an opportunity. We'll do like a Zoom podcast, and we'll get you back on so you can really inform us about your location. And everything. So,
That'd be
awesome.
great.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks,
That's
guys.
cool. Thank you.
Yep.